Have you noticed that we keep creating generation after generation after generation, and with each generation the information that they are expected to know and learn increases exponentially? There is more information today that we are expected to know and learn than there ever has been in the past. And as a result, we have gotten away from some of the very basic information that is necessary to understand what it means to be an American, what it means to have civic education, what it means to have civil responsibility. We have stopped teaching civic education in our public educational school systems. Now, I know there's going to be some people there that say, wait a minute, I had it for 3 weeks in elementary school or 2 weeks in middle school or 1 semester as an elective in high school. But for the most part, we have gotten away from teaching civic education, and we have reared generations of people who don't understand what it means to have our government and what the government's responsibility is and what the people's responsibility is relative to our government. Now, let's talk about some of this. Let's talk about civic. Let's talk about civics. Let's talk about civil responsibility. With us on the program today, and this program you are watching is called Civil Discourse, and it's sponsored by the American Civil Liberties Union of Northeast Florida, and my name is Ken Hurley. With us on the program is our guest, Dvorah Ben-Moshe. Dvorah is a friend. Dvorah is the co-founder of a new organization, a new incorporation, a new nonprofit called Civication Incorporated. Thank you for being on Civil Discourse today. I'm very happy you're in the studio. You used to be a resident of Jacksonville, Florida. You've moved to Austin, Texas. You're a graduate of Florida Coastal School of Law. Congratulations on that. You've practiced in law in a local law firm in town, Terrell Hogan, and now you've seen a need relative to what I've talked about in the opening. What are you doing? What is the need? What are you doing? What are your plans? And you're a co-founder. We'll get to who your partner is in a minute.
Well, it's great to be here.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, when I went to law school, I realized I was learning a lot of things for the first time. And as I was learning them, I realized I shouldn't be learning them for the first time in law school.
Mm-hmm.
The only civic education I ever got, I went to public high school in New York, was an elective in 12th grade called
Mm-hmm.
Problems in American Democracy,
Mm-hmm.
where we learned about some of the civil rights cases, some of the Supreme Court
Mm-hmm.
landmark cases, and it was fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
But it really made me realize how much I didn't know.
That's good. I think a lot of people don't know what they don't know, and when you don't know what you don't know, how do you know you're missing it?
Right.
But you somehow realized.
Well, in a democracy, we are the government, and our government...
Say that again.
In a democracy, we are the government.
We, who's we?
We, the people, citizens. We are the government.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to know what our core documents are that create who we are. And I had the privilege of teaching 3 semesters at FCCJ.
Mm-hmm.
And the students in my class were learning a lot of this for the first time themselves.
A lot of what?
Law.
Mm.
They were learning the 14th Amendment. They were learning about due process
Equal
clause.
protection and,
exactly,
and
due process.
And that there are amendments. And this is the first time they're learning it in at FCCJ. Is that where you taught?
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. It was in the paralegal program.
Mm-hmm.
And they were fascinated. And I thought, well, if they're not learning this, and then I also have I have 2 kids, and I have a 13-year-old who's not learning this in school. I ask him, are you
Mm-hmm.
learning about voting? He's doing it on his own. You know, he was watching the Electoral College, he was watching the map, how it was going from state to state. He was very interested, but that was really his own interest. But
well, he probably gets a little bit from where he's living. I mean, some of what you do rubs off on him, I'm sure. But what your point is, he's not getting it in school. Where he's getting his formal education, a public school, is not teaching this.
Exactly.
And how old is he?
13. He's in 7th grade.
7th grade. It's my opinion that we should teach this in elementary school, in middle school, and in high school. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about what it means to have civil responsibility, what our government does, what civic education is, what civics education is. And we should teach it so it becomes rote. I've had the privilege of going into certain classes and being the guest lecturer at universities around Jacksonville. And what I'm doing now is I'm bringing in questions, and I'm starting with a quick civics quiz, just 10 questions, and I ask them to answer them. It's not a multiple choice, it's fill in you have to know the answer, so you can't really guess. And guess how many people pass? About 98% fail.
Wow.
10 questions.
And this is college.
This is college. And guess where these questions come from? You're right. They come from the United States Naturalization and Immigration Test, the test that we ask people who want to become citizens of this country to take. But if you're born here, you can get into college, and in your case, your observation, you can get into law school and still not know this and probably fail that same test. And these are not complicated questions. There's a need for this. There's a need to go back and teach civics education in, I say, from ages 2 through death. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the country's on a new bandwagon of patriotism. But when we break that down, what does it mean to be patriotic? Do you understand what the founders created with the core documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the preamble? If we're going to talk about really being patriotic and carrying on our civic responsibility, we have to know what that is, what's expected, our responsibilities, to think critically, to go to the source of these, to really read the Constitution.
That's an excellent point. Go to the source. Another observation I've made when I'm out and about and doing the Q&A after I set the platform and make my few remarks in the beginning, we open everything up for questions. And it turns out that it seems like most people are getting their opinions from third-party sources, that they're not formulating their own opinions from source documents or from the originating document or from the originating organization. For example, the ACLU gets trashed because they heard people say bad things about the ACLU, but they've never gone to the source, come to me directly, or come to some other people, or go to the web page even. We have a great web page. If you're interested in seeing the web page, it's aclu.org, simple as that, and read our positions on any issue of interest. And then you can take us to task on your opinion versus the ACLU's opinion. But I agree with you that people are not going to the source, and I think that's a very important thing to learn.
Right. There's so much information that people want to hear what other people think. If, for example, without going to a movie, you read the review first. You decide if you like the movie without watching the movie. You decide if it's good or bad based on someone else's opinion.
That's true.
But if we teach these early in grade school, that when an opinion comes down, a student can say that doesn't make sense. There is a separation of power. It's dispersal. It's a limited power. It's only what the people ordain the government to have. We're not protecting our powers. They're given powers from the people. Then we have a population able to understand and hold the government accountable because they understand these core documents.
There's a study, I think, by the First Amendment Center done about 3 years ago that cited that more people could identify who Homer Simpson was than name the rights contained in the First Amendment.
Right.
Now, that speaks, one, to the power of television, two, to the creative writing of the people who created The Simpsons and what a nice show that is for millions of people, but three, to the ignorance of the people who participated in this survey relative to the core documents of the founding of this country. Now, why is it important not to remain ignorant? I have an opinion on that. My opinion. Here's what I think. I think for those who remain ignorant and don't know what it means to be an American, what it means to have civic education, what it means to have an understanding of how our government works, those who do know will prey on the ignorance of those who don't know, and they will become fodder for the cannons of those who do know, and they will be manipulated by those who do know. That's what elections are all about, to try to persuade people to think a certain way. And if you're ignorant on some subject, you are more easily persuaded. The more you know, the better decisions you make. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. We have to have some